EU countries have agreed to start the process to open another accession cluster with Ukraine and Moldova.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed reports circulating U.S. media that Israel had planned to kill Tehran's negotiating team during April talks in Pakistan. Interpol has issued a red notice for a Ukrainian woman believed to be the main suspect in a bombing attack earlier this week in Monaco, which left multiple people injured.
Ukraine and Moldova notched another milestone in their EU accession bids. EU countries unanimously agreed on Friday to advance the opening of another cluster of negotiations. Cluster 6 covers external relations, foreign policy and security, which is relatively less contentious than other policy areas. EU accession is divided into 35 negotiating chapters, grouped into 6 clusters. The opening of Cluster 6 reflects Hungary's gradual shift in position following Peter Magyar's election victory over Viktor Orbán. Orbán had kept Kyiv's accession bid on hold for years over a dispute concerning the treatment of the Hungarian minority in western Ukraine. Magyar's new government worked with the Ukrainian side to resolve the issue, leading to the long-awaited opening of the first cluster in early June. The European Commission and Ukraine have pushed to open the remaining clusters before the summer break.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ireland is beginning its 8th rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union. Dublin will face numerous international challenges over the course of this 6-month term, but it is perhaps the EU's budget that will require the greatest effort on Ireland's part.
It is fair to say that Ireland has the work cut out for its 6 months presidency of the EU Council. Trade, competitiveness, security and enlargement are among the top priorities. But no other priority is more urgent and more consequential than the next EU budget. Taoiseach Micheál Martin told us that negotiating a new budget means reconciling the irreconcilable, because there are so many red lines, so many demands that nobody wants to make any tangible concessions. Still, the goal is to have a final deal in December, and this will require very long hours of negotiations and a great deal of effort. Jorge Liboreiro, Euronews, Cork.
The European Union's long-term budget should balance defense and aid funding, as they are both crucial for European security, United Nations Development Programme Administrator and former Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo said.
We see more military spending, and we totally understand that in the current circumstances. But if you want that military spending to be as effective as possible, you will also have to invest in preventing that a conflict arises.
A year ago, the European Commission proposed a €2 trillion long-term budget, prioritizing economic competitiveness and defense. The proposal is currently being debated by European heads of states before it will be ratified in the European Parliament. De Croo does not believe that with defense being put at the top of the ballot, aid will miss out.
Development is part of your security agenda, and development is also part of your economic agenda. And these are two sides of the same coin.
The former Belgian minister stressed reconstructing faster after a war contributes to peace building and creates economic opportunities.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has confirmed media reports that U.S. officials believe Israel may have tried to kill Iran's top negotiators in an attempt to derail ceasefire talks between Washington and Tehran, which took place in Pakistan. The talks in Islamabad, mediated in part by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, led to the framework deal between the two countries signed on the 17th of June to end their war. Iran and the U.S. have since been in a 60-day extended ceasefire window, which is meant to allow for negotiations to reach a permanent deal to end the fighting. The New York Times and Washington Post earlier reported that the White House was concerned that Israel could target Araghchi and Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf during the April talks, to the point where they asked regional allies to warn Tehran. The U.S. warning was sent via intermediaries, as the two countries have no formal diplomatic relations since 1980 and typically communicate indirectly. In an interview with local media, the top Iranian diplomat said he was made aware of the threat, but opted to travel to Pakistan regardless of it. He emphasized that, quote, "We're Iranians, we do not fear death for our nation," as he slammed Israel, calling them cowards who attack from behind and labeling them a cancerous nation.
European courts held the Spanish government's extraordinary regularization of undocumented migrants. That is the question raised by the Spanish Supreme Court as it considers whether to refer the matter to the Court of Justice of the European Union for a preliminary ruling. For now, it has not made that decision and has first asked the parties to submit their arguments. But how far can European courts really go?
La Comisión Europea ya ha dejado claro que este tipo de políticas públicas dependen de los Estados miembros. Esto es que España tiene competencia para abordar una regularización de estas características, incluso cuando es masiva, como es el caso, y afecta a cientos de miles de personas. Esto significa que las prejudiciales que ha planteado el Tribunal Supremo al Tribunal de Justicia de la Unión Europea, yo creo que son innecesarias.
The legal expert maintains that if there are doubts about how the regularization was approved, these pertain to Spanish law and not European law. Furthermore, the Court of Justice interprets EU law but does not replace national courts. Meanwhile, the proceedings are already having an impact even before the Supreme Court decides whether to refer the matter for a preliminary ruling.
Solamente abrir ya este debate, que es un debate que se está abriendo sobre un supuesto que no es real porque el Tribunal Superior de Justicia no ha abierto el proceso, sino que ha preguntado a las partes si estiman que debe abrirse el proceso, y solo el ruido que eso ha producido llena de temor a 1.300.000 personas que están a punto de conseguir sus papeles para estar en una situación regular en nuestro país.
If the CJEU were to find an incompatibility with European law, a future ruling could limit member states' leeway to approve new regularization measures. For now, the proceedings remain in the hands of the Supreme Court.
The last shreds of hope are quickly fading as the search for any remaining survivors continues in Venezuela after powerful twin quakes rocked the country more than a week ago. Locating survivors has dramatically slowed after the passing of the critical 72-hour window for emergency response, but authorities are still able to make some miraculous rescues. The official death toll is more than 2,500, but rescue officials on the ground have reported higher figures as tens of thousands remain missing. Though the government has not directly revealed how many are missing, an opposition website has logged over 38,000 cases, criticizing the government's response, which they say has been slow and haphazard. Facing intense criticism, acting President Delcy Rodriguez pushed back against those claims, stressing that her cabinet have mobilized all available resources to respond to the crisis at hand as best they could. Rodriguez also pushed back against allegations that the government has been underreporting deaths to avoid domestic blowback after it was reported that the United Nations will be providing 10,000 body bags to Caracas. Interpol has issued a red notice for a Ukrainian woman over a bomb attack in Monaco earlier this week. The organization named 39-year-old Anastasia Berezovska as the main suspect in the bombing, which took place on Monday evening and left multiple people injured. Ukrainian business tycoon Vladimir Molaev was wounded in the attack, while his partner was critically injured and two others sustained moderate wounds. A red notice requests law enforcement around the world to locate and provisionally arrest an individual, but is not an international arrest warrant. A prosecutor told reporters that the suspect was sitting on a bench in Place des Moulins before placing an explosive device outside the building in which the victims were staying, which was triggered via remote control upon confirming the targets were present. Investigators later identified a car with German plates believed to have been used by the suspect, who prosecutors say disguised herself as a man to carry out the attack. The prosecutor added that the car was traced through Monaco, France, and into Italy.
After 6 weeks of training in Lithuania, the German Army's Freedom Shield exercise has come to an end. But before the soldiers head home, Lithuanian student Camille gets to enjoy one final highlight.
Und da wird der Turm gesteuert, ferngesteuert.
A ride in a tank across the training ground. Camille is here after winning a Lithuanian Ministry of Defense essay competition on NATO and hybrid threats.
Meine Idee war es, dass die jungen Menschen, also wie gesagt auf Social Media, können die halt Informationen nachgucken. Also man kann nachgucken, ob die richtig sind oder vielleicht auch falsche Desinformationen sind. Und ich finde, dieses kritische Denken könnte uns dann auch sehr helfen.
Camille climbs inside the Puma tank, but our camera has to stay outside. The vehicle's interior contains sensitive details that could be of interest to potential adversaries of the German armed forces. Back outside, she shares her impressions of the Puma.
Ehrlich gesagt dachte ich, dass es irgendwie mehr Platz da drin sein würde. Und es ist sehr eng. Da sind auch sehr viele kleine Geräte, so auch Knöpfe und auch diese Lenkungen. Das sieht aus wie eine PlayStation-Konsole. Ja, also es ist sehr aufregend.
This year marked the 8th edition of the essay competition, with a record 400 entries. Security in the Baltic states is clearly on the students' minds, and even if you don't win the prize, you can still book a tank ride in Lithuania yourself.